Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill, state of the program for the Texas Longhorns. Not only going into 2025, this is really a look under the hood of this Texas Longhorns program and saying, hey, what do we have going right? What do we have going wrong? And I think what makes this episode so fun to do is, Dill, I don't know if there's a program that is firing on all cylinders more than the Texas Longhorns. And I get they did not win a national championship in the 2024 year, but you start taking a sneak peek to 2025, 2026, there's a ton to like in terms of the direction this program is going under Coach Sark. There's a lot more than just on the field play. Like that's where it starts for sure. And you've seen Texas consistently get better on the field every single year. You take a look at talent acquisition. You take a look at player development, which is sneaky, probably the best aspect of this program right now. We're going to take a look at the draft picks, the amount of draft picks Texas is putting out to the league, homegrown talent. It's kind of on a next level. The coaching staff, I think, is elite. Texas is checking almost every single box that you want to see in a college football program, not only going into 2025, but really the future of where this program is going. Want to get into it, take a look under the hood. Before we get into it, as always, to the Texas fans, I would love to hear how the Longhorn fans are feeling. If I'm a Texas fan, I'm feeling great. The amount of support y'all have shown the fellas over the last couple of weeks has been amazing. This has been a program that's been very fun to talk about, even not necessarily achieving their goals in the 2024 season. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'll put you on the tee box, and let's start with how you evaluate any head coach, how you evaluate any program. That's what they're doing on the football field. To me, I look at it, say it's really hard to say this program is not going in the right direction and going in that direction pretty damn quickly.
And the only thing you can kind of quibble with is, are they playing their best in big games? And that's probably the most frustrating thing from this year, especially. Like, I look at that SEC championship game, especially. Like, I think they played well against Ohio State. They put themselves in a really good position to win that. A couple bounces go against them. Quinn Ewers probably not playing his best game, but that man-to-man, that team was playing well enough to win that. The SEC title game is the one I look at, like how thoroughly they dominated, especially in that first half, and not to be able to come away with the win. That's probably the only like bitterly disappointing game I think you've seen in the last 2 years. Like the first couple of years, obviously we're off to a rough start, but I mean, Sark had to rebuild that Texas team from a real like ground up, if you will, from where Herman left.
The two Georgia games are really the only two games that you can be upset with in terms of how Texas played. And here's my take on it. And the one probably argument is kind of what you said. Hey, we got to play our best football in the big moments. Look, every single head coach that has now broken through and won national championships, Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, even Nick Saban back at Alabama, Dill, it's about putting yourself in those spots every single year. You're going to break through. And you look at the last 2 years, this was the last 2 years was really the first time in a while Texas has been in those opportunities to do something special. You continue to put yourself in that spot, I'm pretty confident that Texas is going to break through, especially
if you get better quarterback play, because that's probably been one of the issues in the past games, that they weren't able to kind of poke through, if you will. I don't think they got good enough play from Quinn Ewers in some of those football games. And that's not to really take a huge shot at him. Like, he's still going to be a probably relatively high draft pick. He did a lot of good things at Texas, but his inability to probably elevate that team and kind of carry it along when they were on equal footing or maybe slightly unequal footing, you need your quarterback to once in a while be able to give you that type of magic, and they just weren't getting it.
Yeah, the difference maker at the quarterback spot. You need it, and just not sure if Texas had it. Probably the second most intriguing thing, and there's so many things that are clearly going in the right direction. I'd even argue that the culture around this Texas program, like they are starting to learn how to win football games. You can tell it's a very healthy culture, which, I mean, Coach Sark in his past, as I struggled in that department, he's nailing it with Texas. Talent acquisition. You know, when you get talent acquisition right, when you get culture right, and you get player development right, you are going to be competing for national championships every single year. And you look at Texas, they are starting to check all those boxes. And I think most notably on the high school recruiting trail, and specifically recruiting the quarterback position and line of scrimmage. I mean, Texas got, when Coach Sark got to town, It was a primary focus on recruiting the high school ranks. And as they went into the SEC, you could tell the focus was, hey, we got to start looking like SEC programs along the lines of scrimmage. Why has Texas taken the massive steps they have over the last couple of years? To me, it starts with not only the line of scrimmage play being very, very good. How do you get your line of scrimmage play to be very good? You got to recruit those bodies at the high school ranks. They're not only finishing top 5 in pretty much every single high school recruiting class since Coach Sark has gotten there. They are doing it by building the lines of scrimmage the right way in this modern era of college football.
In the offensive line, that pipeline to me really feels
Elite.
fair. Like unquestionably, like kind of right in terms like you see like got really good players go down like Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams, and you got guys immediately kind of stepping in playing really, really good football like Gooseby and some of those other players. I think I then look at the defensive line. That's probably where you could quibble a little bit. It has felt like, especially these last 2 years, both into the 2024 cycle and now again in 25, you're probably taking more defensive linemen than you'd want. And right now, like you look at who's going to be that real impact guy, like Alex January is certainly very interesting. But then I look at their ability to kind of correct that and rectify it. They bring in an elite class of defensive linemen this year, led by Justice Terry. So again, I look at Steve Sarkisian and what he's doing. Like, I mean, when there's a problem with this Texas team, I do feel like he addressed it really quickly, whether that's in the portal, whether that's on the high school trail. He doesn't like kind of let things build and spiral and like, okay, this team's just not going to be a great defensive line team. Like, okay, we probably didn't have the pipeline we needed in the past couple of years. Well, that got rectified pretty quick this year, it feels
and
like.
there's a ton of examples of Texas doing that, right? They were a little concerned about the wide receiver position with guys like A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy moving on. All right, you go land Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden. And you didn't exactly hit on Isaiah Bond, but you sure as heck hit on Matthew Golden. Kind of fixed that. You filled the cracks. And, hey, we could use a really experienced difference maker at the safety position going into 2024. You land Andrew Makuba. In my opinion, just revolutionized the defense. Coach Sark uses the transfer portal just about as good as anybody in the country, where they don't need to. And you look at the transfer portal rankings, they're, 75th in 2025. Why is that the case? It's not because Texas is swinging and missing on transfer portal targets. It's because we don't have to go to the portal for that many options because we recruit the high school ranks the way that we do.
And they don't lose good players. That's probably
Player
the big
retention.
one. I look at Texas, like they just don't lose any players they don't want to lose. Their player retention's elite. And with that, you only use the portal very seldomly to fill in gaps. And I think you can target higher quality guys at positions of importance. But again, like it's not a team that I'd ever expect to have like more than 8 or so portal guys in a given year because they just don't have the room for it.
Yeah, and being intentful with the transfer portal use is huge. Like we're not just going to land guys to land guys. We're going to look at our roster, say where are biggest holes. That's what we're going to do. I think they did a really good job of it in 2025. It's not going to reflect
even their ability to create that culture through it and like not be like what Ole Miss feels like or what Florida State feels like or some of these teams that I don't think are about to put themselves in a great position to take swings every year. It'll probably be up and down. If they hit on their class, maybe they'll be good. But then are they good enough in tough moments when things like kind of get hard? Are they good enough to kind of weather those storms? I don't know. I don't think we've seen a ton of that. The teams that have been good have been able to develop guys from high school, and that is the bulk of their team, and that's really where Texas is kind of at right now, early in Sark's career.
And
there's some other teams with younger coaches who aren't quite there yet.
I feel like everybody in the national media who wants to talk about Texas is recruiting, and it's been awesome, right? The number one class in the country in 2025, no arguments there. The player development nobody's talking about it. The player development's been elite. And Dill, we've done these state of the programs for a lot of different college football teams. We haven't seen a list like this. You go back to 2024, and one of the things that I'll point out is a lot of the names that you see on your screen right now, they're not transfer portal additions. Yeah, some of them are, but a lot of them were recruited out of the high school ranks, developed within this program. I look at it and say when you recruit the way you do, you're going to have a lot of draft picks. But in terms of maximizing all the kids that you've landed on the high school recruiting trail, I don't know if there's a program that's doing it better than what we're seeing Coach Sark in Texas do.
And honestly, for me, player development doesn't even really start with the draft picks. Like, yeah, Texas is going to have a lot of draft picks. They recruit well. They have a lot of talent. But I look at how he was able to flip that culture and their toughness from where Tom Herman left it. Like, they were like the prototypical, like, oh, they have a lot of skill,
Big
but they
12
might have
team.
been the softest team in the Power 5 level. Like, when Tom Herman left them, they didn't play defense. They didn't tackle. Their offensive lines were pretty weak. They couldn't run the ball. I mean, again, like even Steve Sarkisian, like you think of him as a mastermind play caller, and he's certainly that. I don't think anyone would ever really pinged him as the guy who was going to bring in like the toughest culture in college football.
Yeah,
And then
he's
you
done
look
it.
a couple of years later, you look at how that defense plays fast, aggressive. They tackle really well. Their defensive line can be dominant. Their offensive line, like, yeah, they can throw the ball. They have good athletes, but their ability to run it and be tough and be physical, like, yeah,
Well,
it's
look
nice
at where
to
your
have
draft
these
picks are.
benefits.
Look at where these draft picks are. You start looking at the projected draft picks in 2025. Calvin Banks, arguably the best tackle in the country. You start going down the list. Cam Williams. I think I would have liked to see Cam Williams come back for one more year because I think he could have been a top 10 NFL draft pick with another year. Alfred Collins, Barron Sorrell, arguably one of the most underrated defensive linemen that I saw in the country. Vernon Broughton, Jake Majors, guy that doesn't get a ton of attention, was damn good football player for Texas. Not only are you putting out a lot of draft picks, you're putting a lot of line of scrimmage draft picks out there. Again, that's to me why Texas is where they are at as a program. And you talk about player development, you talk about producing NFL draft picks, you talk about the coaching staff. And this to me is the most underrated conversation that you can have with the head coach. I go back to, all right, like Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. What do those great head coaches all have in common? They have great staffs around them. And you go back and look at Nick Saban's coaching staffs around him during his time at Alabama, incredible coaching staffs. Look at Coach Sark. Kyle Flood, is there a better offensive line coach in the country right now? Probably not. You look at the Chart Choice, one of the best running backs coach in the country. Pete Kwiatkowski, as your DC, you stuck with him with some growing pains. Arguably the best defense in the country in
And
2024.
that's the big thing. Like, I would have thought, frankly, I was kind of calling for some changes. I thought after
Yeah,
last year, I look at the way that secondary played, I was like, oh, they had a really good defensive line. They had good linebackers. Like, they had a lot of things, and their secondary, for whatever reason, didn't really feel like it was playing up to snuff. And like, you look, I mean, again, I'm a quick trigger guy with coaching staffs.
you
Like, that's
sure are.
probably why I wouldn't make a good AD or a good head coach, whatever. But like his ability to not like panic like some of these other coaches are, where it's like the first sign of like adversity, well, someone else is going to take the blame for this. It's not going to be my fault. Like, again,
Yeah.
you look even just the personal maturity from Steve Sarkisian and what he's kind of developed himself into, just like one of the premier leaders in all the sport. I look at that ability to kind of ride with Pete Kwiatkowski and not give up on him after what I would frankly characterize as a tough year. I think that's like big time
And
leadership, big time program kind of stuff.
And how about retaining your staff too? And I know Tashard Choice interviewing with the Dallas Cowboys. Again, if you have your assistant coaches going up to the NFL, it means you're hiring the right guys. But you're not. I mean, you're not Ohio State right now, and losing your guys to like lateral moves. That's another thing that stands out. You're keeping your good coaches within this program. It's it's a program to me that is firing on all cylinders. And I don't know if there's a program that's operating at a higher level than Texas across the country. Now it's about, hey, we're doing everything national championship caliber. We got to continue to put ourselves in the college football playoffs, continue to put teams out that are national championship caliber. It's coming, in my opinion, for Coach Sark and the Texas Longhorns, but you're operating the right way. And that's
And
what
he's
matters the most.
maximizing that program because I do feel
Yeah,
like Sarkisian don't
100%.
get a lot. Oh, he's at Texas, big money, whatever. Like all the big programs have all those things.
Yeah.
You still need to be an elite head coach, an elite leader, all those kind of things. And right now, you see the way he's kind of got that thing humming. I mean, he is doing a lot of really good things. I will resent to my core those naysayers who just want to point at, oh, Texas oil money, whatever. Like,
Well,
that's
how
just
do
the
you
cheap way to do it. It's like
the
everyone's kind of got that.
the most frustrating aspect about those people, look, like it or not, that's part of being a head coach, like generating funds. If you want to be a good head coach in this modern era of college football, you got to network, you got to talk to boosters, you got to talk to donors. Coach Sark's doing that about it. He is putting the full force of this Texas Longhorns program behind him on the recruiting trail, behind him with this football program. That matters. I mean, we're Michigan fans. It never felt like Jim Harbaugh, even with the national championship, really did that with Michigan. Coach Sark's doing it at Texas, and that's part of what makes him an elite head football coach that's doing really elite things with this Texas Longhorns program. We'll sign out there. The boys are buying stock in the Texas Longhorns.
There's probably no team that
I don't think so.
Interested to see how good they can be and where he can take this than Texas right now. Like maybe Oregon's the other one I look at. They're really kind of clicking on all cylinders too, but man, Texas is gonna be right there.
Yeah, I agree. Last year was Oregon for me. Like last year I was just buying all that they were my pick to win the national championship. For me, it's Texas. They're my pick to win the national championship. And you tell me like, hey, buy stock in one program for the next 5 years. I don't give a damn if it's that high. I'm gonna keep buying it because it keeps going up. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.